some football I don't know about you. Who else could it be but your man Lou? Yeah.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Well, the Monday Night Football overtime. Steelers, Colts. This was a game that neither one of these teams are going anywhere. These aren't playoff teams. We know that. And in games like these, you struggle for a purpose. Why am I watching this, right? For me, it's easy. I'm a football fan. I digest anything that the NFL puts out, no matter how bad of a product it is. And so I'm going to watch intently, and I usually find reasoning behind why I'm watching. Give me a reason to watch. For the Steelers, it's very easy. You're not going anywhere this year. You know, Mike Tomlin's got this crazy streak, 15 years or whatever it is, of coaching without having a losing season. That's still on the line. He still can achieve that. I don't see him doing that this year, but stranger things have happened. They easily could have won last week against Pittsburgh or Cincinnati. So they're still fighting. But most importantly, it's the development of your young quarterback, your first-round pick, Kenny Pickett. The successor to Ben Roethlisberger, a guy you just spent a first-round pick on, and you want to see him develop. And so every single start that he gets, every opportunity he gets to take the field is another opportunity for him to get better, more comfortable, more acclimated to the NFL, more acclimated to the offense and the players that surround him. And so that's what you're looking for as a Steelers fan. Whether you win or lose really is of no consequence. You want to win. You want Kenny Pickett to feel what it's like to win and continue to get better while winning football games, right? You don't want him to continue to stack up losses, even though he's gaining experience. You would like to see him win some games. But ultimately, how is Kenny Pickett looking? And did we get this right? Did we get a guy that we can build around for this foreseeable future? For the Indianapolis Colts, the question, what am I looking for? What is the purpose of what we're doing? It's a more complex one. Honestly, I actually think the answer is very simple, but you could try to, spin it any way you like. They're a mess. And honestly, they may be the most lost team in the NFL right now. I say that because they play on a weekly basis with absolutely no purpose. You don't have the quarterback of the future on the roster. You're not going to lose enough games, more likely than not, to be in a position to draft the quarterback of the future. Now, this is a really deep quarterback class coming up, and you don't have to have a top 5 or a top 10 pick necessarily to get a really good quarterback if you can scout correctly and find a guy that fits what you want to do. But they've got one of the most cowardice GMs in the NFL and a guy that has refused to select a quarterback for the last 3 or 4 years. Andrew Luck, he knew wasn't coming back, and they should have handled this accordingly. Now, when Luck first retired, you were caught off guard maybe. You were blindsided. He did it in the preseason right before the start of the regular season. And so you were scrambling. And I get it. Veteran team, you felt like you were right there. You were having success. So you bring in a guy like Phillip Rivers. Totally get it. He picked up right where, Andrew Luck left off. You went to the playoffs. You would have liked to have seen Rivers come back. And he decided to retire. At that point, you should have been looking for the successor in Indianapolis. No more of this, go get a veteran that's available bullshit. Go find your successor. No drafting a guy in the 4th round like Jacob Eason. No drafting a guy in the 4th round like Sam Ehlinger. Stop being a coward and go and get a quarterback. Yeah, I'm talking to you, Chris Ballard. Instead, he continues to pussyfoot around, goes get Carson Wentz. That doesn't work. They blame everything on him as if he's the sole reason why they didn't make the playoffs last year. Again, a cowardice move by an organization that has been cowardice for the last 4 or 5 years. So you find yourself in this position now with Matt Ryan because you do the same shit over again instead of going and finding a quarterback. And obviously this past year wasn't the best draft to go and find a quarterback in. I'm aware of that. But here we are. Instead, and I thought maybe this is genius on the part of Jim Irsay. Maybe they're finally getting it, right? Like, it's so tough in the NFL to tank. And I'm not a fan of tanking, okay? And honestly speaking, it's damn near impossible in the NFL to tank because too many guys are invested in their livelihoods to get 53 guys on one accord to not win. Now, you can put a product out on the field that's inferior. You can put guys out there that just simply aren't good enough no matter how hard they try, but that's hard to do. The Colts aren't talentless. So you put guys out on the field, they're playing for their livelihood, whether their next check is coming from the Indianapolis Colts or it's coming from the Vegas Raiders or it's coming from the Kansas City Chiefs. They don't know, but they've got to play their best ball. So it's hard to get a team to tank. But they did the one thing that's going to give you the best chance to stink and tank by saying, hey, we're going to play Sam Ehlinger for the remainder of the season, figure out if this guy's any good or not. You know, that's a great approach. You know, find out if we can build around Sam Ehlinger or not. Spent the 4th round pick on him. Let's see what the kid can do. Hell, Matt Ryan's not the future of this team. We're not winning anything of consequence this season anyway. Let's find out what he can do. And if he sucks, guess what? We'll be drafting in the top 5 and we'll get ourselves a brand new spanking quarterback. If he's good, maybe we have something here. Maybe we stumbled on something. Well, they F that up. They fire Frank Reich, who had decided this is the direction we're going in. Irsay brings in Jeff Saturday. That's a disaster. And you got to love Irsay and the balls on this guy. They win the first game. And what have I told you guys with the interim head coach thing? The first game after an interim head coach is instilled, that's the most dangerous that team's going to be under that new coach. It's new. You don't know what to expect. That team's going to go out and bust their ass for this new coach. And generally speaking, for whatever reason, that first game, that team is ultra dangerous. We've seen it, okay? We've seen it time and time again in this league. It's happened already this season with Carolina. It happened with Jeff Saturday. They beat the Raiders. They haven't won a game since. Now, they've been ultra competitive in both of the losses, but still, who cares? Tonight was the greatest example of why you don't go out and hire a guy off the street that has never coached. The end of game execution or lack thereof by the Indianapolis Colts was embarrassing tonight. It was on the same plane as what they're doing up in Denver right now with Nathaniel Hackett. I mean, this was a clown show at the end of the game tonight. You don't get extra points for leaving the game with timeouts. I don't know if he's aware of this. I mean, the guy played 13 years in the league. I would think he would understand the usage of timeouts. He worked as an analyst for ESPN. I would think he would understand that, hey, you don't get extra points. They don't tack on 2 extra points for every timeout that you have at the end of the game. You might want to spend these. So you go to the 2-minute warning. You've got 3 timeouts. You're driving down the field. They're not getting chunks. They haven't been getting chunks all night long. You know, they've been nickel and diming their way down the field. They're getting modest gains, and he's not spending any of his timeouts. None of them. They call their first timeout with 30 seconds left in the game. It's not like they're at the 11-yard line and they don't want Pittsburgh to have an opportunity to score a touchdown or a field goal to walk it off after they score. It's not like they're trying to bleed off as much clock because they've got Tom Brady on the other side of the field. So we got to make sure they don't have any time left. You're still damn near at midfield. You're like at the 40-yard line, and you got 30 seconds left because you just let a minute and 30 seconds bleed off the clock aimlessly instead of calling your timeouts. Like, what are you doing right now? They left this game with 2 timeouts, did the Indianapolis Colts. Even if they would have thrown the flag for pass interference, which I didn't think it was pass interference anyway, on that last play to Paris Campbell, there would have been like 22 seconds left on the clock. Time is not your friend at the end of a football game when you're down, okay? You're supposed to have as much time as possible. You know, this is why you don't just hire anybody. That's guys that have not done it before. That right there, that little time capsule right there, that little space in time at the end of that game is exactly why you don't go out and hire a guy that's never done it. He was absolutely lost. I remember Dan Campbell looking the exact same way as an interim head coach the first time around when they fired, what's my guy's name? Joe Philbin, back in like 2015 or whatever it was. When they fired Joe Philbin and they promoted Dan Campbell to interim head coach, they won that very first game against the Titans, right? Everybody's like, oh my God, Dan Campbell, this guy's full of energy, he's full of life. He lost probably the next 5 or 6 games in a row. He was lost on the sidelines, didn't know when to use timeouts. Game management was a struggle for him. It really helped him, though. You know, that experience helped him. And then coaching under Sean Payton really helped him, and it prepared him for the opportunity that he's got now. But that's totally different. He went through the chain of command. He went through the process. He was a positional coach. You know, he was there in the trenches. He saw what it was like to be a head coach. He wasn't working for a network. He didn't get a job because the owner likes him, because he played for the team for 13 years. The Colts, right now, it has to be excruciating to be a Colts fan. And you know what? I don't feel bad for fan bases like the Indianapolis Colts or the Green Bay Packers, who have had just absolutely the best luck as a fan base. Yeah, haven't won a ton, you know, maybe not as much as you probably should have with what you've been blessed with. But to go from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers and really not miss a beat, and to have a chance to win a Super Bowl just about every year because of who your quarterback is, no matter who the coach is or what talent you have around Aaron Rodgers, I don't feel bad for you when you have a season like you're having this year. I really, truly don't. The Indianapolis Colts, to go from Peyton Manning to suck for 1 year and 1 year only, and then end up with Andrew Luck and then piss away his talents by not protecting him, I don't feel bad for you. You had an opportunity to have a team that could have won multiple Lombardis, and you effed it up because you couldn't do the one fundamental thing that you had to do, and that was protect Andrew Luck. I don't want to hear about what this GM tried to do, what that GM tried to do. I don't care. You failed at the one thing that you had. You had one thing that you had to do. One goal, one mission. All you had to do was protect your investment. You didn't do it. Instead, you drafted guys like Philip Dorsett in the first round. We're not going down that road. The bottom line is now you're at where you're at, and I don't see any light at the end of the tunnel. There's no quarterback on the roster for you to feel like, hey, let's see what this guy can do. Went down that road with Sam Ehlinger. You quickly averted that path, right? That's a dead end already. Clearly, Matt Ryan is at the end of his career. So that's a dead end. I mean, there's always going the cowardice route that you've taken for the last 4 or 5 years. And Jimmy Garoppolo will be available this offseason. Maybe Aaron Rodgers is available. I don't think he's going anywhere. Derek Carr could be available, but they're winning games now. Like Derek Carr, he's wised up. Like, hey, wait a minute. If we end up with a top 5 pick, my ass is out of here. We better start winning some football games. They've won 2 in a row. So hopefully the message is very clear to him that we better get out of the top 10 or else I won't be in Vegas with my best friend who I lobbied to get here. And they're winning games now, so maybe that changes. We'll see. I don't really know what they're going to do. But they've already won 4 games this season. I surmise with them playing in the division that they play in, have they used up both of their Houstons already? Maybe they have. Let's check and see. I think they've used up both of their Jacksonvilles already. I think they played all but one. I remember very vividly when the schedule came out, they had a weird quirk in their schedule where they played like 5 out of their 6 division games within the first 9 weeks. And then obviously you can't play all 6 of them because you have to have one for the final week of the season. So I think they've used up all of their divisional games. Now they've got to play, games outside of the division. Let me just, double check. Let's see what we got here. Texans already once, Jags already once, Titans already once, Jags twice, Titans twice. So their Texans game is what remains. They're going to win that game at the end of the season. They still got the Giants. That's a winnable game. Chargers, who knows what the hell they're going to get out of the Chargers. They should be able to lose that game. They're going to lose to the Vikings, and they're going to lose to the Cowboys. So they could win 2 more games. One for sure. They're going to beat the Texans in week 18, okay? They're going to end up with, at a bare minimum, 5 wins, maybe 6, depending on what happens against the Giants. I don't think they're going to beat the Chargers. They're not going to beat the Vikings, and they're not going to beat the Dallas Cowboys next week on Sunday Night Football. Speaking of which, why hasn't that game been flexed out of Sunday Night Football again? Don't tell me that the Cowboys, because they're the draw and they're America's team, that they should be on. Like, get their asses out of there. Why aren't the Commanders and the Giants, who are both in the playoffs right now, if they started today, why aren't they playing on Sunday Night Football? Why are we being subjected to this Colts team again and the Cowboys? Why? Help me. I'm lost. Anyway, I digress. You're going to win 5 or 6 games. Where does that land you in the grand scheme of things? Let's check the draft order right now. We know the Texans are going to get the number 1 pick when it's all said and done. Jags just got a big win. The Raiders are trending in the right direction. The Panthers are playing hard for their coach. He's trying to end up being the permanent head coach of Steve Wilkes in Carolina. So they've won again. So you're being helped out by other teams that are playing better football. But let's check the draft order right now for the teams in the league. So Chicago, they may be done winning games this season. Okay, so we know Houston's going to end up with the first pick. They've already pretty much cinched that. They're not winning very many more games this season. Chicago, with the injury to Fields, they've probably seen their last win. If he doesn't come back, and we've heard the time frame for Justin Fields is day-to-day to season over. With them not being in any kind of a competitive state, with this season not having any real meaning to it, why are you risking the long-term health of your starting quarterback who took on a phenom type of status this year in Justin Fields? Doesn't make any sense. So I'd like to think that they're just going to roll with whomever at quarterback. They're probably going to win maybe a game, if that, down the stretch. So they're probably going to end up with the 2nd pick, right? Lions own the pick for the Rams. The Rams are awful, and Matthew Stafford's season may be done. Aaron Donald may be done this season. They may not win another game. So the Lions may be picking 3rd. The Denver Broncos absolutely suck ass. They may not win another game this season, even though their defense is so good. They'll probably fall into 1 or 2 more wins just off the strength of their defense. But their offense is so bad that I don't even know if it matters if their defense could give up 3 points and they would find a way to still lose the game 6-3. Or excuse me, their defense could give up. Yeah, I said that right. They would still find a way to lose the game 6-3 because the defense gave up 3 points, but the offense threw a pick 6. Like, it's insane how bad they are. Carolina is currently 4th. They're 4-8. And that tie doesn't help you either. The Saints are 4-8. The Saints aren't done winning. They're going to win another game or 2. Same with Carolina. They're not done winning. That division is so bad that they're going to beat up on each other and they're going to cannibalize each other. And so everybody in that division is probably going to win at least 1 or 2 more games. And they'll all finish under 500, but nobody will. It's just like the NFC East, a couple of years back in 2020. And nobody finished that season off lower than, I think, maybe one team in there. Dallas might have been, 4-win team. Everybody was right around, 5 or 6 wins. That's how it's going to end up in the NFC South this year. Everybody's going to be right in the mix. No, I think the Eagles were the team with like 4 wins. They were, well out of it. Whereas I think Dallas had 5 and the Giants had 6, right? That's how it's going to end up. Arizona is 4-8. I really don't know what to make of the Cardinals, but they're not going to just lay down and die. So they're going to win a game or two down the stretch here. Green Bay 4-8. Don't know the status of Aaron Rodgers. We'll talk about that probably here shortly. And then, so I've said all of this. Indy right now is 14th. We don't have to go through every single team. They're 14th right now in the draft at 4-7-1. Now, again, a lot of 4-win teams here. Deshaun Watson's coming back. That's going to help Cleveland probably win 2 or 3 more games before it's all said and done. Jacksonville's still fighting, kicking and screaming. They're going to win a couple more games. Same with Detroit. They're not done. They're going to keep fighting, and they're going to win a game or 2 here. And so with all these 4-win teams, a lot of them are going to finish with 5 or 6 wins, and you may be able to slide all the way up into the top 10. You're right now currently at 14. You're going to beat Houston. You're going to win 5 games. Where will that put you? I don't know. But I said all of that to say this. With no quarterback on the roster and the prospects of you getting a quarterback looking shaky because, one, I don't trust your GM to pick one because he's been scared to pull the trigger on a quarterback no matter what round you're in. He's been afraid to pull the trigger on the first-round quarterback, on the second-round quarterback. He's waited and waited and waited, and then he's taken a guy in the mid-rounds and, decided I'm going to go get a veteran and I'll take a 4th-round quarterback and we'll see if this guy's any good. Okay, cool. Well, now the time's up. The jig's up. Everybody knows your move now, and they want results or they want your head, whichever comes first. And so this has got to be a tough watch for Indianapolis Colts fans. Like, what are we doing? You're spinning your wheels in place. You go out and get Jeff Saturday, and clearly he's not the coach of the future. So, and that really doesn't matter because you could still be with Frank Reich, and then at the end of the year he gets canned. You get a new guy. I mean, it really doesn't matter. I don't want to make a big deal out of hiring Jeff Saturday, other than why did you do it? It was unnecessary. You brought more attention to a team that really didn't need any light cast on them. You suck, and we didn't need you to suck and bring attention to you sucking. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. But at the end of the day, I am fascinated with how this whole situation in Indianapolis goes. But I've watched this thing deteriorate from Chris Ballard being praised. And I was one of the people. I'm guilty. I'm not going to sit here and act like I wasn't a Chris Ballard fan. Just 2 years ago, I was over here telling anybody that would listen, Chris Ballard is one of the best GMs in football. And I loved his roster building. And I still think he's a great evaluator of talent. This is not a talentless Indianapolis Colts football team. But 2 years ago, I was convinced after they got Phillip Rivers that they're going to draft a quarterback at some point. Even at 24, where you in the playoffs, you lose in wild card weekend. I'm convinced, that year when Tua and all those guys came out, there were some ancillary quarterbacks. And look, I don't know how you feel about Jalen Hurts then. I wasn't the biggest Jalen Hurts fan, but I said there's got to be a guy. There's always a guy when there's a deep draft class like it was in 2020. There's always a guy that no one's talking about, no one's thinking about, that's ultimately going to be good in the league. You just got to find him. Jalen Hurts is going to be the guy from that 2020 draft. We'll see what happens with the 2021 draft class and what quarterback emerges that you weren't really sure about. It could be Bailey Zappi. It could be him. I doubt it. Or actually, he's the 2022 draft, right? I don't know if there's a quarterback in 2021. That was a really deep draft class. But we'll see, if there's a guy in that 2021 draft class no one's talking about, kind of emerges out of nowhere. But I said all of that to say this. This season for the Colts lacks purpose, and you're spinning your wheels in place. You're not going to make the playoffs. You're not going to lose enough games to be in the top 5. But there's enough quarterback talent in this draft that if you end up right where you are, let's just assume you end up with the 14th pick. I don't think you're going to end up that high. I think you're going to end up or that low, rather. I think you're going to end up somewhere in that 10, 11, 9, 10, 11 range, somewhere from 9 to 11. Say you end up at 14, though, just for the sake of this argument, because that's where you're at right now. There'll be a quarterback available at 14, and we'll see who comes out, who decides to go back to school. It's hard to say right now because there's some guys that I think have a ton of talent that if they come out, they'll make for an intriguing prospect and an evaluation. But whether some of those guys that have more eligibility or not come out, it really doesn't matter. There'll still be enough talent. You just got to decipher what guy fits what you want to do. Is Jeff Saturday the long-term answer at head coach for this team? Like, I laughed in the offseason when people tried to convince me that the Colts are a stable organization. Like, their whole Carson Wentz situation was a red flag. It was as red of a flag as you could get. It wasn't because of what they did, even though I thought it was a knee-jerk reaction. It was more about how they handled themselves in the aftermath of trading him. Okay, so you traded him. First of all, the stupidest thing you could do with the guy that you're trying to trade is to badmouth him. And they couldn't help themselves. They were tripping over themselves to make sure everyone knew that Carson Wentz was responsible for the demise of their season in 2021. He was the reason that they didn't go to the playoffs. And we got to get rid of this guy. You're tanking the guy's value, and they were lucky to get something because in this league, the quarterback position is the most important position, and there's always someone out there looking to upgrade their room. And so they were able to find a suitor despite trashing Carson Wentz and making sure everyone knew he was the reason that they missed the playoffs last year. Even after you traded him, you were still bombarding this man with insults and degrading him for what? That's the organization. That's the type of organization it is. And then you see the moves that they make. You fire Frank Reich. Whether that's the right thing or not, that's debatable, right? You want to get a head start on your new head coach? Fine. That's the only reason you fire a guy in season. Unless you truly want to see one of the guys on the staff, like in Carolina, for instance. You fire Matt Rule. Clearly, he was in over his head. He's a college coach, and that's okay. You figure that out. You realize you made a mistake. You move on. You cut your losses. All right. And now you give a guy an opportunity that has been a head coach in this league before, really wasn't ready when that opportunity came knocking the first time. He gets a second opportunity. And this is what guys do when they get that second opportunity. They say, you know what? I messed up the first time around. Here's what I'm going to do if I get another chance. And you're seeing what is being done in Carolina right now with the guy getting a second chance. And he's doing well. And he's getting a young team to respond. He may end up being the head coach there. That's when you make a move. When you want to see what another guy on the staff is capable of, maybe you've got the right guy in-house already. You just need to give him an opportunity. Or you want to get a head start. Maybe you want to start talking to see if you can convince Sean Payton to come out of retirement. And if you got to give this New Orleans Saints a draft pick or two to get him, you do that. Or maybe there's another guy out here that's waiting for an opportunity. Or maybe there's a college coach that you're interested in. You're not shying away from the college ranks, even though Matt Rule didn't work out. But whatever the case may be, you want a head start. Fine. Go right ahead. That's not what the Colts did. They went and got a guy off of TV and brought him in to coach the team. They didn't see if Reggie Wayne had the ability to coach this team. They didn't see if Gus Bradley had figured it out after being a coordinator at multiple stops, after having an opportunity in Jacksonville, giving him a second chance. They didn't see if a guy on the roster had the talent to be the next head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. They went and got a guy off of TV. You got no quarterback. You got no direction. Who knows what the hell you're thinking about doing in the offseason? Your GM's scared to pull the trigger on a quarterback. This organization is a mess. Anyway, Kenny Pickett looked good tonight. I was impressed with Kenny Pickett. I still think that there's some throws that I'd like to see him make. I'd like to see him maybe speed up his process just a little bit. But again, that comes with time. More reps. You know, it was funny listening to Aikman, you know, because he's really keen on a lot of this because Aikman can relate to these young quarterbacks that come into the league and struggle because Aikman was a part of a 1-15 team his first year in the league. And so he knows what it's like to come in, have the weight of an organization dumped on your shoulders as a first-round pick quarterback and for your team to suck and you to suck as well because your team sucks. And so, you know, most quarterbacks come in and like Aikman said, the thing that is the most, tough for a young quarterback and the thing that they have to adjust to is the speed of the game. Well, Kenny Pickett's like, that's not the problem for me. I'm good on the speed of the game. Played enough football in college. It's really just getting this offense down pat, you know, really understanding what defenses are trying to do to me. Like in college, you get basic looks. You're not going to get too many creative things. You're going to get a lot of cover 3, primarily you're going to get cover 4. And, you know, you may get a defensive coordinator that switches some things up here and there, but for the most part, it's pretty vanilla across the board. You're not getting all these complex looks from defensive coordinators in college. So now you get to the NFL, and now you're getting all these different complex looks. It looks like this, but they're really doing this, and they're disguising well, and I've got to learn, you know, what teams are trying to do to me. A great example. They run a slant flat combination in the game early on. And he throws the football to the flats to Steven Sims on a 3rd and 2. It's the perfect play call for what the Colts were doing. They buzzed down a safety late to take away the flats, but the slant is wide open. You know, when they do that, if they buzz down a defender, that means that slant is open. Throw the slant. He throws it to the flats. That's something that he'll watch on film. He'll get that experience. He'll learn from that. He sees that again. He knows immediately, I got to go to the slant. And he'll make the throw, right? That's why you want to see him play, make some mistakes, learn from those mistakes because he's going to grow. You saw the mobility. He's a way better athlete than I gave him credit for coming out of Pitt. I knew he was an athlete. I didn't think he was this good of an athlete, though. He can run. He can move. His mobility is really going to help him in this league. Just need him to speed up his process a little bit more. But you missed the throw in the end zone you'd like to see him make to George Pickens. That's got to be a touchdown. Like, there's no excuse for that. Got to make that throw. But I like what I see from Kenny Pickett. And the turnovers are starting to subside a bit. He's taking better care of the football. I hated the sack that he took, you know, on that second possession after they got the interception that pushed him out of field goal range. You'd like to see him. He had an underneath check down to the running back who was running an arrow route. Yep, the linebacker was there. I'd much rather you throw it to that running back there and let him get hit and get a gain of 3 and get the field goal versus, you know, eating that. And again, he didn't want to make a mistake. You could tell it's been pounded in his head. Hey, look, Kenny, if you got to eat it, eat it. We much rather end the possession with a kick than you turning it over. And you could see he wanted to throw that ball to the running back. So cut it loose, dude. Cut it loose. Yeah, that linebacker is bearing down on him. That ball's safe. If you don't throw it too high and it caroms off of his hand, you put that ball on that running back, it's okay. He'll catch it. He'll get hit, and you'll be able to kick a field goal. Those are the things I want to see him get better at, speeding up the process. you're hot. You can't pick up. I don't know what happened and why no one blocked Yannick Ngakoue. I'm still kind of baffled as to what the Steelers were doing on that particular play. I don't know if he didn't expect that kind of heat off the edge there, but there was an outlet. Get it to it. Anyway, like what he was able to do. I was a huge George Pickens guy in the draft last year, and I felt like teams like Green Bay, that Indianapolis team that was playing tonight, should have been all over George Pickens, right? You need a number one receiver. I thought George Pickens had number one receiver written all over him, and you weren't going to have to spend a first-round pick to get him because of his injury history. But if he's healthy, and that's your job, not mine, to determine if this guy knee checks out, and if everything checked out medically, he was the guy to me. Not Alec Pierce. And even though the kid in Green Bay right now is playing good football and Christian Watson, not Christian Watson, even though he's playing really well now, and I like what I've seen from him recently, the guy was George Pickens. That's the guy that looked like a number one receiver. And to me, he looks like a number one receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So they've got something there with those two. I really feel that way. They've got something there with those two young guys. They've got a building block offensively. And Najee Harrison, he got injured tonight. Hopefully it's nothing serious. Probably an oblique injury. Who knows how long he'll be out with that. But they've got a little something there. The defense is solid with Minkah Fitzpatrick on the back end and obviously TJ Watt on the front end. They've got a really solid group. So there's a lot to like on the defensive side of the football. They just play hard. They're physical. I like the Steelers, and they still seem to struggle stopping the run a bit, which is a little disheartening. But at the end of the day, I like what they do defensively. Made some big plays down the stretch of this game. Alex Highsmith stepped up with some huge plays down the stretch. And so I like what they're able to do there. Indianapolis, I just think they failed to get the ball to Jonathan Taylor enough. Point blank. How many times did Matt Ryan throw the football tonight? Whatever it was too many damn times. Let's check and see real quick. Matt Ryan threw the football 34 times tonight. Jonathan Taylor, it didn't feel like 20 carries. He carried it 20 times. So, that's not a terrible number, but he probably could have carried it some more, honestly speaking. But they had a coming out party with Jelani Woods. This was by far and away his best game of his career. And I was talking to Cody Felger from I think it's Bring the Something podcast for the Indianapolis Colts. And I think it's Bring the Juice podcast, if I'm not mistaken, for the Indianapolis Colts. And I think Jelani Woods was just coming off of one of his better games. They had won. And we were talking about he needs more opportunities. And for whatever reason, he hadn't been getting them. Got him tonight, and you saw him make the most of it. He had a drop early in the game, but they went back to him, and he was a huge factor in this game. 8 catches, 98 yards. And he had some of the bigger plays for them offensively. And so that's one thing they've always been able to do in Indy, especially with Chris Ballard, is they've always been able to find talent at tight end. And Mo Alley Cox is solid. Jelani Woods looks the part. And so I'm still not in love with their receivers, even though I do like the receivers they have. I don't love any of them as a number one. I just think they got a bunch of dudes that are probably more suited to be 2s and 3s than 1s. And that's the problem is with drafting Alec Pierce, is that you still don't have an alpha. Got some really solid receivers. I think Michael Pittman is a high level 2. I think Alec Pierce has the ceiling of a high level 2 if he continues to develop and mature. I think that Parrish Campbell has the makings of a solid number 2. Health willing. None of these guys are a number 1. That's why they're struggling, because no one's going to step up. There were times where nobody was getting separation tonight. Not a single one of those dudes. If I was a Colts fan, I would have been upset with the way Aikman was killing them tonight. I mean, Joe Buck and Aikman were absolutely slaughtering the Colts offense tonight. Even when they got a completion, Aikman was like, I don't know what's going on here. I don't know if they're not showing their numbers to the quarterback or they're inaccurate throws, but that should have been more than that. Like, they're struggling in the passing. Like, they were killing them all night. And then there's the clock management at the end. I've already, said what I needed to say on that. That was Nathaniel Hackett-esque. Okay. You never want to be mentioned in the same sentence with Nathaniel Hackett. I've seen one and done head coaches. The one guy that I think in the last 5 years that was the most one and done-ish was in Cleveland with Freddie Kitchens. Nathaniel Hackett is approaching Freddie Kitchens territory. Like, I don't know how he makes it out of Denver this year alive. With a new ownership group, his ass has to be out of there. But maybe they give him a chance. Maybe they say, hey, your first year was rough. Russ coming over didn't make it any easier. Maybe you guys figure it out in the offseason and you put together a much better product. I don't know, but he seems to be approaching Freddie Kitchens, territory. You never want to be mentioned in the same sentence with Nathaniel Hackett, but that end of the game sequence was Nathaniel Hackett-esque. That was grotesque and hard to watch. Anyway, I digress. Enough of me ranting. I just went off on a tangent there, but let's see what you guys have to say. If you're out there and I didn't scare you away by talking about everything except the game, and you want your comment read, use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read on the air. If you want to guarantee and ensure that your comment is read, super chatting is the way to get that done. So with that said, let's get to the comment section. Got a super chat here from my guy, John Perez. Thank you for the super chat, JP, who writes, didn't watch a single minute of this game, but what was the biggest result of the weekend to you? You didn't miss much, JP. I'll just tell you that. You didn't miss a single thing by not watching this game. The biggest result of the weekend, there were a lot of good ones. Obviously, Thanksgiving was huge because I thought every game had some kind of impact to it. Bills needed to win. Their division is as competitive as any in football right now. Every team over 500. Dolphins have already beaten the Bills once this season. They've already lost to the Jets. Both of those teams are knocking on the door. Bills are trying not to let them in. You couldn't afford to lose to the Lions. And the Lions were pushing those boys to the limit. So that was huge, getting that win. The NFC East matchup in the second window with Dallas and New York, kind of figured it would go the way of Dallas. But the Giants hung tough. They fought. And that had huge playoff implications, and Dallas took care of business because they're trying to stay, within striking distance of Philadelphia. They do play them once more. And if Philly slips up somewhere along the line and they continue to win, they'll have an opportunity when they play them again to maybe knot it up at the top of the division. So that was a big game. Dallas took care of business. The Giants continue to slide a bit. We'll see what happens with them. And then the nightcap, Minnesota's waiting in the wings in case Philadelphia does have a little slip up to try to get the number one seed. Can't afford to lose at home to a New England team that had been struggling to score. And what do you know? The Patriots score whatever they score with 26, 27 points, whatever that number was in the game. It was crazy. I didn't expect them to score that many points. And, a fist fight broke out there, with some points being scored. So, the Patriots are fighting for a playoff spot. They're probably not going to make it, but they're fighting their asses off. And the Vikings. So I thought the entire Thanksgiving slate was palatable, right? Then you get to Sunday, and there were some weird results, some really good games. Baltimore had a big loss to Jacksonville. Like, if you're serious about competing in the AFC, Jacksonville's no pushover. You got to find a way to beat Jacksonville. You know, the Chiefs struggled with them, but the Chiefs found a way to win. And I get it. I've already said, when Jacksonville upsets someone, it's going to be at home. It's never on the road. They struggle on the road. This game was at home, and Baltimore have had some games like this. That game against, Carolina last week, I know it's super windy out, but that was an ugly win. Now, again, a win's a win. I really don't care how you get it. But I thought that was a precursor to what happened in Jacksonville. Like, I'm not sold on Baltimore. Not sold on Baltimore. That was one of those results that, we're going to see about that. Chargers getting a big win on the road, comeback fashion, going for 2 and winning the way that they did. That's a big result, because they're trying to fight for a playoff spot as well. Couldn't afford to go to Arizona and lose to a Cardinals team that, when's the last time they've won a home game, right? I think they beat New Orleans on Monday night, but before that, they hadn't won in like 9 previous home games, and they're not a good home team. They're not a good team this year at all in general, but they don't win games at home. So that would have been a tough one to swallow if you're, the Chargers losing to the Cardinals. They found a way to get it done there. So that was a big result. Obviously, Washington and Atlanta, massive game there in the NFC, because those two teams were right on the outside looking in. Both teams are fighting for playoff spots. Atlanta's a little bit different because they could still get in as a division winner, whereas Washington isn't winning their division. It's wild card or bust for them. Whereas Atlanta's like, I wouldn't mind getting a wild card, but my best chance to make the playoffs is by winning the division, which they're squarely in the middle of a chase there, with Tampa losing. I think the biggest result of the weekend is Tampa losing to Cleveland. I was going to get to that in a second, but Atlanta and Washington was a huge game, with playoff implications, and Washington got it done. And so now they ascend to 7-5, and they've got a chance to really do some damage. But the biggest result was probably Tampa losing, because with everybody else in the division losing, the Saints getting blanked, Panthers are really irrelevant, or at least you could have made them irrelevant. They've beaten you already if you're Tampa. So you win against Cleveland like you're supposed to, with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback. And with Atlanta losing, with the Saints losing, and the Panthers, again, still, they're alive, but they're not relevant. If you win, you lose, and now they're relevant when they win, and they won. You had a chance to really distance yourself from the rest of the division. Be the only team over 500. Start to create a little. Look, you don't need to create a ton of separation. That division is going to be won by a possession receiver. This guy ain't breaking anybody off. He's using his body as a shield, and he's going to big body somebody and catch a back shoulder fade. All you needed to do is create a little separation. Winning on Sunday would have done that for Tampa Bay. You lose that game, and now you've brought everybody else back into the fold. Atlanta's still right within striking distance. Saints are still right within, and you play them next week on Monday Night Football. That's going to be fun. They're now within striking distance, are the Saints. And the Panthers, who already beat you this season, they're one game out of first place now because you lost at 4-7. I think they're 4-8 are the Panthers. They haven't had their bye. They'll have their bye this week. So technically, they're not a game back, because I think the Bucs are 5-6, if I'm not mistaken. So, but they're still only one game back in the win column. So, but the loss column is what matters the most, and Panthers are 4-8. Nonetheless, you've allowed them to hang around, have hope. That was, to me, the biggest outcome, losing in overtime there. But a lot of big outcomes on Sunday. Seattle losing to the Raiders was huge, crippling, to their playoff hopes. You're trying to make the playoffs. You have to beat teams that you're supposed to beat, especially when you're at home. But the thing that we've talked about with Seattle reared its ugly head. They suck on defense. And there was a little stretch there for like 2 or 3 weeks where, hey, their defense wasn't that bad. But you look at the opponents that they play and you see why their defense wasn't bad. They play a team that can actually score, and they catch them on the week where they feel like scoring in the Raiders, and all of a sudden you're ringing up 40 again. Remember, this was a Seahawks team that was giving up 30 plus and 40 early in the season like it was nothing. Then they started playing teams like Arizona and Tampa Bay, who are offensively challenged, and they started to look like they were gangbusters on defense. All of a sudden, they're getting better on defense. They played the Giants, and the Giants struggled to score. And all of a sudden, those numbers came way down, and they're thinking, hey, we're improved on defense. No, you're not. And this game against the Raiders was proof that you've still got a long way to go defensively. So that was a big loss for them as well. But anyway, biggest result was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers losing. They had a chance to really separate themselves in that division, and they failed to do so. John Perez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. My guy JP writes, could Ballard lose his job in Indy? He absolutely can. His seat is hot. I don't know if it's hot enough for him to get fired, because I think what they collectively did was they made Frank Reich the fall guy. So I think that buys Chris Ballard more time, but now he becomes public enemy number one, right? I don't think he gets fired, because if you're going to fire him, you could have just fired him right when you fired Frank Reich. Similar to what Jacksonville did when they fired their GM, Dave Caldwell, right? They fired Dave Caldwell during the season. They fired their head coach after the season, I think, and they cleaned house. You could have done that if you were going to do it, because you could start, looking at candidates for that vacancy if that's the route you were going to go. I think they made Frank Reich the scapegoat, just like they made, when no one likes to take the blame, you pass the buck. They made Carson Wentz the scapegoat last year. And, Ballard to me is gutless, because I think he went along with it because of the owner. And I thought Frank Reich was the only one that, said, look, I still believe Carson Wentz can be a top 10 quarterback in this league. But he knew in order to keep his job, he had to, go along to get along. But Ballard, went hook, line, and sinker along with it, because he's like, look, this is the dude that calls the shots. He's the one that signs the checks. If I go against the grain, my head's on the chopping block. And it's all about survival in this league. So whatever he's got to do to survive, that's what he's done. He turned against Wentz. Then he turned on Frank Reich. Now, though, there's no one else to turn on. You're the guy that's now squarely in the crosshairs. And if this thing doesn't turn around, and I think he's going to have another offseason, and if he doesn't figure out a reason to give their owner hope, whether it's a quarterback, a young quarterback that they can believe in, or trade for another veteran quarterback that can come in and help them win immediately, if he doesn't do something to change the narrative in Indy this offseason, he'll be fired next year as well. The Phillies Ace 34. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, the Phillies Ace 34, writes, my guy Lou, what's good, my friend? What's going on with you, the Phillies Ace 34? He writes, can Heineke get Scary Terry going and expose the Giants secondary, or is it more beneficial to run the ball? Can DJ succeed? Yes, and yes. It's more beneficial to run the football, because that's who we've become. That's what we've morphed into, and it protects the quarterback. Again, they have to protect Taylor Heineke, because he is limited in what he's able to provide. But at the same time, running it effectively. And that's the thing. You can't just run it just to run it. You have to run it effectively. Like we did on Sunday, when you run it effectively, it impacts the defense and how they play you, and you should have opportunities. I'd like to see the run game, and I've said this already, I'd like to see the run game create more opportunities for the pass game, for guys to be running open and for them to be hitting these open receivers. So that Giant secondary is vulnerable right now. If you can't take advantage of that Giant secondary, and you've got problems. So I don't think they're going to stop running the football necessarily, with the Giants are a lot stouter against the run than the other teams in the division. And so we'll see what they're able to do against the run. If they're able to stop the run, they may force Heineke to have to throw it a little bit more, but we'll see what happens. I think you can run on the Giants a little bit. And if you can do that and have some success, it may open up some opportunities with some of these young corners that they've got out there running around, and that young secondary and as a whole, because of the injuries. So we'll see what happens. But this would be a good week for Terry to get off. But again, got to establish the run first, and then off of that, you hope to have some opportunities down the field. And yeah, DJ can succeed. For whatever reason, I like to think that our defense is good enough to hold Saquon Barkley down and make Daniel Jones beat us. And I don't know if they have enough weapons, but we've been here before. We've had these conversations. There's been games where there's no Saquon Barkley. It's just Daniel Jones. They had Alfred Morris and Wayne Gallman one year. I think it was 2020, as a matter of fact. And Daniel Jones cooked our ass, and they were able to run the football. Shit made no sense. It never makes any sense when it comes to Daniel Jones. So as much as I want to say, yeah, we should be able to shut that shit down and Daniel Jones should have a rough afternoon, I can't, because when we play them, for whatever reason, he seems to play some of his best ball. Frankie, yo, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, my guy. Frankie, yo, thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, someone tell Jeff Saturday he can't take timeouts home. I'm at a loss as to what he was doing there at the end of the game. Completely speechless. Again, he was moving into that Nathaniel Hackett territory. That's nowhere anyone wants to be. Let's see. Nick Caps, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, sorry again, Victory Monday hangover. Celebrate. Oh, don't apologize for having a Victory Monday hangover. Enjoy them. Cherish them. We haven't had enough of them. So celebrate them. Each and every single one. I've celebrated Victory Friday this year. I've celebrated Victory Tuesday. And now we're having a bunch of Victory Mondays. And each and every single one of them feels good. Feels good. Live it up, man. Live it up. Mike Stevenson II. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, we have the Saints first round pick. How we. I've said this, and it's really worked out beautifully for the Eagles, because they were kicking the can down the road, and they were really putting themselves in a position that if Jalen Hurts wasn't the guy and they weren't sure, they were going to have the ammunition to do whatever it was they needed to do. They didn't know if the Saints were going to suck like this. They didn't expect, I don't think they expected the Saints to suck. However, in the event that they did, you'd be in a great spot. But even if the Saints ended up being a middle of the pack team and they ended up with the 17th pick, you could combine that pick with whatever your pick ends up being, and you could give a team a package, put together a package deal to move up if Hurts wasn't good enough. Well, Hurts is good enough. You can win with him. And so now you don't even have to spend that on a quarterback. So now the Eagles are in a position where They could either continue to spend these draft picks, or I should say they could spend these draft picks finally, or they could continue to do what they've done the last 2 drafts, which is spend one, trade the other one away, and keep having a first-round pick from someone else to double up in the first round of the next year's draft. So you're in a really good spot right now. You're in a really good spot right now, are the Eagles. Same with the Seahawks. With the Broncos sucking. You know what's crazy with a lot of these trades, when it's first made, the trade is made with the thought process of we're going to be a good football team. So we don't care about those picks. I remember when Washington made the Robert Griffin III trade. You know, after 2012, what were we saying? Oh, we don't care about those first-round picks. We're going to be a good team. And then the next year, we had the 2nd overall pick in the draft. We sucked. The Broncos made that trade, and they're thinking, oh, yeah, we'll give up the next 2-3 years worth of first-round picks. Who cares? They'll be in the back end of the first round anyway. They're going to be a good football team. Hell, we might win the Super Bowl this year. We're going to do what the Buccaneers did with Brady. We're going to do what the Rams did with Matt Stafford. We're going to win the Super Bowl. That'll be the 32nd pick this year, and even if we don't run it back the year after that, we'll have the 29th or the 30th pick. They got a top 10 pick right now. They absolutely suck ass through the Denver Broncos. The Seahawks didn't think they were going to get – they could have 2 top 10 picks depending on how their season goes. Clearly, right now, they're 6-5, and so they're out of the top 10, and they look like they're going to be a solid team. So theirs will be closer to 20. But even if they're at 20 or they're at 19, they barely missed the playoffs, whatever the case may be. They still got the Broncos pick, and that might be 4 or 5 or 6 or 7. So I don't think they're looking to upgrade Geno. We'll see. It's a great position to be in again. Jonathan Hankey. This is a great person to hear from. He's a Colts fan. Like this is what I want. I want to hear from Colts fans. This is perfect. I want to see what Jonathan has to say. Jonathan, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Jonathan writes, well, Louie, win or lose is a win in my book. LOL. Lose to get a higher draft pick or win to show Jeff being a good hire. LOL. I guess that's a perspective that a Colts fan could have, is that because, look, you want to like Jeff Saturday. He's a likable guy. It's not like this guy is a terrible human being or a guy that's a schmuck. He's not Urban Meyer, right? He's not a guy where you're like, man, get this guy the hell out of here. He's a terrible guy. He's a good dude. And he played for your team. You root for guys like that. Clapping big, dirty bird cheeks. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, I slept good as a mother effer today. Winning changes lives. I'm trying to tell y'all, man. It hits different when you win. Everything is different. Everything is better when you win. It hits different, man. Not going to lie. DJ23, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, I apologize for the slander on Kendall. He has played a lot better since the WJ3 left, but we still need to draft a corner in the first. I don't know if you have to draft a corner in the first round or not. I do know that you have to draft a corner next year relatively early. And to me, it has to be in one of the first 2 days of the draft. Clearly, we're not going to have a 3rd round pick. Understand that. That's going to Indianapolis. So unless you make a move like we did this past year where you trade back, pick up picks to give you more picks in the mid rounds, you're going to have a 1st and a 2nd, and then you get into the 4th, and then all of the other picks that we have. So I don't know what you have to do in the first, whether that's a quarterback, a cornerback, an offensive lineman, a linebacker. I mean, there's different ways they could go about it. They definitely need a corner. Nothing has changed. That's a fact. Jonathan Hankey, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. He says, in all honesty, I care more about Pittman and JT both getting touchdowns and some yardage in my fantasy football than this game. That's the state of Indy right now. He says, once both got their TDs, I was to hell with this game. Y'all can suck now, LOL. I think that's where a lot of fans are. Is like they really could care less because it's directionless right now. You know, when you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. And that's a tough place to be. Tough place to be. Jonathan Hankey, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate it. I'm loving this. I want to hear from Colts fans. My guy Jonathan is providing me with some insight that's hard to get when you're on the outside looking in. I need people that are in there living the day-to-day. Nobody ever knows how we truly feel as Washington fans because we live it on the day-to-day basis. This is a guy that's a fan of that team. He's living it on a day-to-day basis. I love hearing from guys and people from different fan bases. He says, Ballard needs to be fired. I do hope we can still get a good head coach for my Colts next offseason, even with the backlash of hiring Saturday. That's interesting. And he's not the only Colts fan. I told you I talked to Cody Felger of Bring the Juice podcast. And he sounded like he was done with Ballard as well. You know, and this was before Frank Reich got canned. When I spoke to him, it was week 8, I think, when we played them. And Frank Reich was still the head coach. They were moving on with Sam Ehlinger at quarterback. But we talked about that whole dynamic in Indy, and he sounded like he was pretty much done with Ballard as well. And Ballard needed to be, you know, his seat needed to be just as hot as Frank Reich's. Frank has been fired. And so I think a lot of people feel like Ballard should be right there alongside him. If you're going to fire someone, it should be Ballard for this mess. But we'll see what happens. I firmly believe that Chris Ballard is going to remain on as GM of the Colts for one more season, one more offseason. And I think it's going to be, you know, widely known. And Irsay is going to make it clear as day. You bring me a winner this year or something that gives me the indication that we have a chance to win moving forward, or your ass is the next on the chopping block. And so I think you're going to get either another move to bring in a veteran quarterback, or you're going to see him be more aggressive than he has been in the past at attacking the quarterback position. Can't wait till the 4th round. Can't wait to day 3 and draft a quarterback again. The Phillies Ace 34. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. The Phillies Ace 34 writes, can you read my green member chat? Thanks. Let me see if I can flag that one down for you. Got to find it on my other monitor. Let's see. There it is. He says, Lou, if all 4 teams make the playoffs, are the 49ers the team Washington is scared of the most because of how legit the defense is played in the second halves? The 49ers scare me because not only are they playing exceptional defense, and that their defense is filthy, but it's not just that. It's a lot of things. It's their commitment to the run game. It's a team that's been battle tested. It's a team that's won in the playoffs. It's a team that's played in the Super Bowl. It's a team that's been to the NFC Championship game just a season ago. They have the pedigree. It's not just that no one's afraid of Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm not afraid of Jimmy Garoppolo, but Jimmy's won. Other than Tom Brady, who's won more games in the playoffs than Jimmy Garoppolo in the NFC? The answer is no one. It's Tom Brady, and then it's Jimmy Garoppolo. Who's played in the Super Bowl that's going to be in the playoffs in the NFC? It's Tom Brady, and then it's Jimmy Garoppolo. This is why the 49ers are scary. Kyle Shanahan, for all of the, naysayers and all the people that think he chokes in big games, this, that, and the third, at least he's been in big games. He's coached in the Super Bowl. He's coached in multiple Super Bowls, once as a coordinator, once as a head coach. Been in an NFC Championship game when everybody wrote them off. No way they're getting to the NFC Championship game. Go to Green Bay and somehow win that game. Easily could have won if Jaworski Tart could catch a punt. They play in the Super Bowl last year. Whatever. What are we on? 56? Whatever number it was. 54, 55, 56. They play in that Super Bowl last year. Not the Los Angeles Rams. That's why they're scary. They play hellacious defense. They've got a ton of weapons between Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk. They got weapons. They had a solid offensive line with Trent Williams devouring opponents. And you got a defense that's relentless, that doesn't quit. And then you got a team that's been to the mountain, not to the mountaintop, but they've been, sniffing around mountaintop. They've been close to getting to the top. So it's that combination of things in a conference that doesn't have a lot of experience that makes me feel like they're a dangerous team. But as my guy, Niners fan, has said, they haven't played, remember I talked about Seattle and how their defense looked a lot better when they were playing teams that are offensively challenged. It's what San Francisco's been doing. The Rams suck on offense. They shut them down. The Saints suck on offense. They shut them down. Saints aren't terrible on offense, but they have these games where they can look pretty bad. And the 49ers, they do that to teams. Like, they got down to the red zone. They got down to the 2-yard line, and Alvin Kamara fumbled. So it's not like, they weren't moving the ball. The Saints moved the football a couple of times, but the defense made plays. They played teams that the Cardinals have struggled offensively, and they had Colt McCoy at quarterback. They've done a good job of, shutting down teams. The Chargers, didn't have Mike Williams or Keenan Allen in the game when they played them on Sunday Night Football, and they took care of business in the second half against them. So, got to give them credit for doing what they've done. But also, we'll see what happens when they play against teams with a better offensive strategy, and teams that may be able to execute a little bit better, against their defense. We'll see. They're a scary team. Again, not afraid of anybody, including the 49ers, but I respect them probably more so than anybody else in the conference. And again, we being Washington, we play them in the regular season. We're going to get a taste of what it's like to go against them. And if they devour us, then that respect may turn to fear. But right now, it's just a respect that I have for them. DJ23, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, I understand fans being upset. Our playmakers aren't getting the ball, but do you want TH, who is limited, throwing in the rain? Again, there are different ways to go about it. There are different ways to look at it. I am in the mindset, which it sounds like you are as well, that in that particular game, with the circumstances being what they were, you didn't need to throw it a hell of a lot. 23 was more than enough times. However, he did throw it 23 times. Are you telling me not a single one of those throws couldn't have been directed in the direction of number one, Jahan Dotson? And I think that's what people are saying, essentially. It's like, hey, look, I'm not telling you to scrap the run and throw it an additional 7 to 10 times so we can get all of our playmakers involved. I'm just saying, you throw it 23 times, that's fine. One of them should end up in the hands of Jahan Dotson. That's all. One of them should end up in the hands of number 10, Curtis Samuel. That's all. You throw it 23 times. We're not throwing it to Terry McLaurin 23 times. Okay? One or two of those should end up in the hands of Jahan Dotson and Curtis Samuel. That's all. But I think we'll see that change on Sunday. I would bet any amount of money that within the first two possessions of the game, Jahan Dotson will have a touch. Whether it's on a run or a short pass, like a wide receiver screen, they'll get him involved. Because a lot is being made of it. And every time that happens, we get an overcorrection. So we'll see. Chaotic. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, at least it wasn't the mighty Broncos, laughing my ass off. Bro, that rookie tight end looks like a defensive end running routes. He's huge, isn't he? I remember watching him at the combine. I was intrigued. Jelani Woods is who you're referring to, the University of Virginia, 6'7", 260, 65-pound tight end. He's huge. And he blew up the combine because he was so athletic. And we were like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I remember there were people that were trying to sneak him into the fourth round. There were some Washington fans that, we were looking for a tight end. And we were trying to sneak him into like the fourth round because we didn't have a third round pick that went to Indy at the time. And we ultimately traded back and picked up the Saints pick and, parlayed that into multiple picks in those mid rounds. But after Jelani Woods did what he did at the combine, there was no way he was getting out of day two. And I don't remember if the Colts took him in the second or the third. I feel like they took him in the second round. He's a monster, man. It's a monster. He's huge, to your point. So I guess this is luck trying to come in here and steal your mojo here. So this is, we're going to call him K80 Tick. We ain't going to call him Chaotic. So this is K80 Tick right here. This ain't Chaotic. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, with all the negative, it's surprising there's still positives. Do you know who leads the AFC in third down conversion percentage and QBR? That's ridiculous. Clearly, he was trying to come in with a D's nuts, right? But, my eyes are trained. My ears are my radar is going off. I already told him it's not happening, man. It's just not happening, bro. Good try, though. Good try. The Phillies ace 34. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, Lou, I agree, but let's hope my Eagles can clean up defensively, and I hope Washington makes the playoffs. I want to play y'all because we owe y'all one at home. I would love to play you guys. In order to get to you, if you stay where you are as the number one seed, that means we would have to win a game. So I would love to play you in the playoffs because that means we would have advanced from wild card weekend, won our first playoff game since 2005. I'm sick of that being the last time we won a playoff game. We're now in the conversation of teams with the longest playoff win droughts. I don't when that statistic comes up and they put the graphic on the screen, I don't want to be in that graphic. We're in that graphic right now. We haven't won a playoff game since 2005. We need a playoff win so that when they have those conversations, we're no longer in the mix. So I would love to play you guys again. You got a lot to clean up, but again, it's easier to clean it up when you're winning. But I heard your coach, Nick Sirianni, talk about special teams. It was a mess. I talked about it last night. The coverage unit was a mess. And he's talking about all kinds of different solutions, including putting starters on that team, bringing guys up from the practice squad if need be. He's not playing around. He's not playing around, and he shouldn't, because anything that is a threat to this team winning is a threat or is a massive threat, and it needs to be nipped in the bud. And that last night, one of the biggest takeaways was how poor your coverage units looked. The Phillies Ace 34. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, the Phillies Ace 34 writes, so y'all better make it so there's no excuses. Well, we trying to do our best, man. All we can do is put one foot in front of the other and just keep trying to stack these wins up, like bricks, and put them in the left-hand column and see when the dust settles and the smoke clears and they start counting those left-hand bricks. Hope we got enough of them. That's all we can do. It wasn't luck. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB who writes, I might have got a little too much sleep today. Maybe you did. Maybe you did. Anyway, I digress. We at the 120 mark. I'll take a couple of hashtags. The last 5 stretch of for the Commanders is the hardest in all losable games. Yeah, absolutely. Every game on the schedule is losable. I said before the season started, we look like food to everyone, and everyone looks like food to us. Meaning, we could win every single game on our schedule. We could lose every single game on our schedule. Look, during this 6 out of 7 that we've won, we could have lost all 7 of these games. Understand that, right? Absolutely. We could have lost just like we're winning them, we could have lost them. We probably should have lost to Indy. We didn't. The only game that I felt like we won and we really deserved to win, and well, we deserved to win all of them, but could have lost to Chicago. I felt like we should have beat Green Bay. We dominated that game in the second half specifically. In the first half, they had opportunities, but I felt like we dominated that game in the second half. But they made mistakes. Don't get me wrong. But I thought we should have beat Green Bay and we should have beaten Philadelphia. Those were the 2 games where I looked at it and said, hey, we played a whale of a ball game. We deserved to win those games. But could have lost to the Bears. Did lose to the Vikings. That's a game that I thought we actually played well enough to win and didn't get it done, which is ironic. But the Houston game definitely should have won that game, played well enough to beat them, but easily could have lost the game against Atlanta this Sunday, right? So we could easily not be in the position that we're in, but we're in the position that we're in because we found a way to win. And that's how it's going to be the final 5 games of the season. We're going to have an opportunity because our defense is solid. We're going to have a chance in those ball games. And it's really going to come down to who makes the least amount of mistakes and who's scoring touchdowns versus kicking field goals. Nick Caps writes, or that wasn't addressed to me. Hassan Moore writes, there's a chance Washington could go 12-5. Not likely, but very possible. Giants look like food. 49ers and the Cowboys would be the toughest, but I feel like we can beat them. Again, everybody looks like food, but one at a time. 12-5 sounds great, but I'm just trying to go to 8-5. Just trying to go to 8-5 and get to the bye. That's it. I'm not thinking about anything past the Giants this week. And then getting to the bye week, healing up, feeling good, good vibes all around, and then come off the bye and pick right up where we left off. That's the goal, one at a time. Captain Spartan 04 writes, still fire Matt Canada now. Kenny Pickett is progressing nicely, mainly just because he's doing the smart play and not turning the ball over. And that's exactly what they wanted to see from him. I mean, he was a turnover machine the first few games he got in. But he's curtailed that a bit. And, he's doing this, like you said, the smart thing. And I know 90% of the Steelers fans I talk to want Matt Canada gone. So that's the thing that sucks for a young quarterback. And the good thing is the Steelers don't care. They're not listening to outside noise. Mike Tomlin isn't going to fire someone just for the sake of firing them. So I think Matt Canada is going to, stick around for a little while. But that's the thing that sucks with the young quarterback is if the coordinator doesn't work or the head coach gets fired, which isn't going to happen in, Pittsburgh. But if you have any change at the coordinator position offensively, now he is working with a new coordinator with a new playbook, new language. Everything's new all over again. And all of the progress that was made in his rookie season, not all of it is thrown out, but a large chunk of it is thrown out because now he's got to learn a new playbook. So as much as Steelers fans want Matt Canada gone, they may have a valid point. He may not be the right man for the job. I'd like to see Kenny Pickett have another year with the same offensive coordinator before you make the switch. Now, there's something to be said about just getting the right guy in there and getting him in there as soon as possible. And so maybe getting rid of Matt Canada and getting the right coordinator in there ASAP is the best for Kenny Pickett's development. Maybe taking one step back to take 2 steps forward is the right way to go about it. But I'd just like to see him not have to do that coordinator shuffle. It never helps the development of a young quarterback. But we shall see. Got another super. This one is from It Wasn't Luck. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, I got a big hat on the way. Let's flood the stadium. A lot of people, that's been the big talk around circles, our circles is the big hat. I saw somebody with a Caps big hat on today. Everybody's like, yo, even Rivera was like, yo, I want one of those big hats. So Brian Robinson said one of his best friends owns a big hat business, and he did the best advertising for his homeboy's business that he could have done. By putting that hat on, he's probably tripled his buddy's revenue just like that. So good for him. That's how you use your, your stardom. You know what I'm saying? That's how you use your power as a person in a position like Brian Robinson is in. You have influence. Use it. He did, and now he's benefiting someone else. That's dope. Chaotic. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Chaotic, who writes, some power rankings have us top 12. Getting some respect now. LOL. Yeah, that other comment wasn't me. I'm aware. Trust me. I'm all over it, man. You don't have to tell me it wasn't you. I know it wasn't you. I got you, bro. I told y'all that last week. I didn't look at the power rankings this week yet. I didn't know they were out. Normally they wait until everyone's played before they put out their new power rankings. But last week, I think it was ESPN that had us 13. So I'm assuming with the win, and I think Tampa was slightly in front of us. Maybe they were right behind us. With the win over Atlanta, I'd like to think that we might have moved up to 12. I know Bleacher Report still had us at like 17, I think, last week. 17. I'd like to think we moved up in their power rankings as well, especially with Tampa losing. I know Tampa was ahead of us in that one. But again, those are subjective. I really don't care where we are. At the end of the day, just keep winning. Everything else will take care of itself. DJ23, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, my guy. DJ23 writes, the way this team plays, they should start selling commander defibrillators. LOL. those would sell like hotcakes, man. Those definitely are necessary because I can tell you what, normally I'm not as on edge. I was definitely on edge this past Sunday. And I think part of it is because normally I have 5 games in front of me other than the Washington game. I've got 4 on my computer screen, 1 on the alternate TV, and then I've got Washington on the big screen. But this week, because my Sunday was kind of janky, got home late from the Thanksgiving weekend, I just decided I just want to watch the 2 games, 1 on the big screen, 1 on the alt TV, and I didn't put on any of the other games. So it wasn't anything to distract me and keep me calm. I'm just watching our game, and then I was watching Jags Ravens on the other TV, and so I was a nervous wreck. I was a wreck. But we got it done. That's all that matters. It wasn't luck. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, writes. Noggin Boss, nice website, full customs, Shark Tank. Don't even know what that means, but I'm just going to leave it alone. Just going to leave that alone. Or maybe he's talking about the defibrillators on the seat. Maybe that's what he's referring to. Anyway, I digress. All right. Steelers get the win, 24-17. I think the biggest takeaway for the Steelers is the development of Kenny Pickett. Looked solid tonight. Used his mobility when it was necessary. Thought he was, somewhat accurate. I thought he missed some throws. Obviously, the opportunity right before the half to score the touchdown to really put this game. If they score a touchdown there and they go up 20-3, the Colts are dead. You missed that opportunity. It's 16-3. It changed everything. They get a big kick return to start the second half, score a touchdown. Just like that, they're back in the game. You score that touchdown, it's 20-3. Even if they get that same return, they score a touchdown, they're still down 10. That changes everything. But when they needed the drive, when they were down 17-16, he takes them down the field, get in the end zone, and he converts a 2-point conversion. And that's a hell of a throw. I thought he should have just run it. Run it, brother. Run it, young fella. He throws a strike in the back of the end zone to George Pickens for the 2-point conversion. So thought he looked good tonight. Colts, they don't get it done. Jeff Saturday looked terrible at the very end of the game with clock management, using his timeouts. But such is life when you bring a guy off of TV to coach a football team. So anyway, I digress. Luck says that Noggin Boss is the website for the big hats. Okay, cool beans. Did not know that. Thank you for the insight. So that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. I thank you guys for joining me tonight. Look forward to chopping it up with you during the course of the week. LouieTeeNetwork podcast will go over all 16 games. There were 16 games. All 32 teams were in were on full display this week. No bye weeks this past week. We get back to some bye weeks this week and next week. And then we're done with buys, and then we'll have all 32 teams playing for the remainder of the season. But we'll break all of those games down, talk about what's to come, really start focusing in on the playoff picture here with everything that's going on. So I look forward to chopping it up with you guys. And nice win for the Steelers. I'd like to see Tomlin find a way to get to 500. I don't see how it happens this year, but the Ravens aren't all that great, and I think I don't know if they played the Browns at all this season. So yeah, they did. They played them on a Thursday night earlier this year. And I think the Browns beat them, if I'm not mistaken. So they've got the Browns once more, and I think it's in Pittsburgh. They got a chance to win some games down the stretch. Don't count them out in terms of having a chance to get Tomlin. What sucks is you can't do the 8-8 thing anymore. You got to win 9 to be over 500. I can't see any way, shape, form the Steelers win 9 games this year. It's not happening. So anyway, Chaotic, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Chaotic, writes, Lou, when Fuller picked that ball, it was so damn loud. I thought of you losing your mind as well. I want that 8 and 5. I saw the clip. Now, I finally heard the crowd, saw the clip of him picking the ball off and how loud it was. And you hear everyone saying it. Christina Pink, as I mentioned on the show, tonight, She did an interview with Taylor Heineke and said, hey, this is the loudest. When Fuller picked that pass, that's the loudest I've ever heard FedEx Field. And I told you at least 15 to 20 of you after the game immediately hit me and said, bro, it was electric. And so that means it's trending in the right direction. That's what that means. People are getting on board. So anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. Until next time, y'all know what it is. Get off the bench, get in the game, and kick it with me, your man Louie T. Until next time, you guys have a good one. God bless, and good night.
Louie T.